What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the CompileSwift podcast. I'm your host, Peter Whittam. You can find this podcast at compileswift.com. Now, this is a very special landmark episode. You are going to know the name, you are going to know the voice, and if you don't, well, you will in a minute. We have a co-host, folks. That's right. Someone a lot smarter and a lot more interesting than me. It only took, a couple of hundred episodes to figure that out. Who are you, mystery co-host person?
Hello, my name is Jeff Pato, better known to some of your audience as Cocotype. But yeah, fellow Swift dev, fellow Swift streamer, indie dev, all of the descriptions.
App maker, code corrector, right?
I write my own apps and I write Peter's apps.
Yes, he rewrites my apps. I'm like, okay, what we're going to do on this stream is I'm going to do it badly, and then you can do it again. Right?
There we go.
Yeah, but you heard us right, folks. We're doing something new here. I convinced somebody that the world needs to hear not me so much. So we have a co-host, which I think is cool and exciting. And it's even better when it's someone a lot smarter than me, because then I get to be the funny guy. You get to be the smart guy. That's the rule, right?
Okay.
Good dev, bad dev. All right, so we're going to talk about something in this episode. It just happened on the day that we are recording this, and we are recording this on August 26th, 2024. Just for a matter of record, hold on to your seats here. Apple is having an event in September. Who knew? Everybody knew. It's going to be on the 9th of the 9th this year at 10 a.m. And it's got a really cool, fancy animation, just like it always does. And I've got my theories as to what it means. What do you think the animation is trying to tell?
Especially looking at it with this animation in play, where it turns into like a sphere type thing with all of these glowing effects. This is clearly mimicking the new glowing effect that you have on Siri with Apple Intelligence in iOS 18. iOS 18.1. The new effect is not available in 18.0. I have not personally installed 18.1 because I don't want to run betas on my carry device, and I don't have a spare iPhone 15 Pro lying around to sacrifice for betas.
Same here. I've not installed any of the only thing I have installed is Mac OS, and I've spoken about that before on the podcast and everywhere else. I feel comfortable doing that because I can do it on separate containers, drives, whatever, and it's easy to recover from. Yeah, I only have, we both have multiple phones and that, right? But none that we want to risk.
Well, I have 18.0 on an old iPhone SE, but that doesn't have any of the Apple Intelligence features. That is on 18.1 and requires an iPhone 15 Pro. And I don't have anything that fancy lying around to use for beta machine. However, that does kind of make something interesting. Apple is showing this glowing effect, this very tied to Siri and Apple Intelligence glowing effect on their invite where, we haven't gotten into this speculation, but presumably they're going to announce new phones. Are these phones going to ship straight with 18.1, or are they going to ship with 18.0 and not have this glowing effect that they're clearly pitching in the invite?
I have a theory on that. I thought about this, and my theory is they will ship with 18.1. Now, here's a couple of reasons why I think that is. Think about the regular Apple patterns. Announced something in September, shipping in late October. So that gives Apple a month to get 18.1 in shape and ship the devices with 18.1 on and all the gloriousness. Now, here's another reason that I think that, though. For all of the features that, there's lots of cool things in iOS 18 and for that matter, iPad and so on. However, shipping a new version of the OS to existing hardware without having the Apple Intelligence, which is the thing that they have talked to death this year, with good reason. So shipping without that is a bit of a, we didn't make it, right? And I absolutely don't think you want to do that with your new phone of the year in the hope that you get to boost the sales up from where they're at right now. And so that's why I think you don't want to ship a new iPhone with a new OS without the cool thing that you've been talking about all year. And that's my theory.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that discussion. However, you did say, announce it now, ship it later in October. That's not historically what they've done with the phones specifically. With the phones, they've very much been, it is always, they announce again, this is another break from tradition, that the announcement this year is happening on a Monday, when normally, historically, they happen on a Tuesday. We don't know what that means, but it is a change. But historically, the timeline goes, they announce on a Tuesday, pre-orders open on Friday, phones are in hands a week later on that Friday. So Tuesday to Friday to Friday, that is the thing. So I don't see them going to 18.1 by that Friday. Well, I mean, it's difficult because we've never had this like two things are in beta at the same time release before either. Do they ship?
Oh, I think we have, actually. Wasn't there a previous version of iOS where they did this? Maybe, was it 16?
I don't recall.
I feel like there was one where, from a developer's perspective, they had the two on the go. I could be wrong. I think there was one. But I think, if I remember rightly, it ended up shipping as the .1 and there was no
I do remember
.0.
them shipping a .1 at one point and never having the .0. But yeah, I don't remember the timeline for that behind it. So it may be that they're planning on launching 18.0, good God, as soon as the announcement, and then shipping 18.1 a week later on the new phones and only the new phones, and plus the iPhone 15 Pro. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting. And I'm with you from the perspective of if you follow their, normal-ish pattern, even close to their normal pattern, I got to think that like you say, there's just not enough time to lock down the 0.1 and ship it in that amount of time. And actually, I would prefer that if that's what they're thinking, that they don't do that, because it's like if you're gonna take a little time, take a little more time and make it good, right? We don't want this situation of it wasn't ready to ship.
Yeah.
And I can't say that about any of the 18 version of the OS because I have not tried any of them.
It's been solid on my test phone, the 18.0. It has been completely solid for me for a while now. More than I can say about Xcode, but
yeah, Xcode's never ready to ship. Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. That's good. I've read more good reports from the places that we both hang out than I have people with issues. And I felt like, from what I can remember, the issues that I read about were kind of fringe cases. It's going to be an interesting one this year because I think we all desperately want at least so many things. But for me, like the home screen layout, having the icons where I want them. And it's like, please don't make that buggy, right? We'll see what happens on that.
Time for a break.
Hey everybody, it's Peter Whittam here from the Compulsory Podcast. I want to tell you about SetApp. SetApp is a service that provides a subscription fee of just $10 a month, and you get access to over 200 Mac applications, and it's also available now on iOS as part of that deal. I use the service because it just has a ton of really good first-rate apps that I use all the time. And for me, it's invaluable as a developer to have access to tools for things like APIs, for planning projects, writing emails, writing documentation. And you can get all of these things, including database apps, all of that kind of stuff, right there on the SetApp service for just $10 a month. You can use as many or as few applications as you need. If you're interested in checking this out, go to peterwhittam.com, peterwhitham.com/SetApp, SETAPP, and you can see the details there. And it's got a link that you can go over and start using the service and see how it works out for you. I strongly recommend this to every Mac user.
Break time over.
I guess we should speculate a little bit about what's the new hardware, the new phone going to be. And I think it's wrong to say that there's not been anything that hasn't impressed me over the past few releases of the actual hardware. but they've just been very predictable, right? I'm hoping that they're going to finally stop saying things like fastest one ever. We can't wait to see what you do with it. I mean, it's like, please retire those phrases, right?
They'll never retire those phrases.
I'm curious, again, I've said this before, cameras and that, they are all so good for the last few years at least that it almost doesn't matter, especially last year's one, right? I've got the 15 Pro, with the optical zoom, however you want to call it, that clever mechanism inside. You reach a point, just like CPUs, where they're so good that it's like, look, now it's all just marketing spin to get me to get a new one. So I am curious what they'll do this year. There's all that speculation too about that new color, but at least the screenshots, I really hope they're not real.
See, so I don't follow rumors, so I'm not sure what you're discussing. Can you describe it?
It's and I'm going to try and make it sound nice.
Okay.
And it's kind of that brown bronze color, and in my opinion, gosh, I hope it's not true because it looks.
Again, having not seen it, that actually that sounds great to me, because that was what I wanted last year with the natural titanium. Okay. Their initial screenshots that they put out, the initial like press shots that Apple put out of this titanium, made it look a lot closer to like their Starlight colored devices. And I have 2 Starlight iPads, and that is my favorite colorway from Apple that they've done in a very, very long time is the Starlight colored. Yeah, exactly. And so if they have something that is more of a browny, bronzy color, which is what I really wanted from the natural titanium last year, and it turned out, it looks fine. It's decent. It's just, this is way more of like a gunmetal titanium than what I was hoping for when I ordered it. But hey, if they've got a nice bronzy, browner one, sign me up.
All right, we're going to put a marker in that so that we'll see what happens. Because the other part of that rumor was that they were, again, it's all rumor, right? But the thing was retiring the blue to slot this one in. And I hope they don't retire the blue, because I had one of those and I really liked it.
They do that every year, though. They do take out their like one special color and they swap it out, because the year before that they had that like nice like dark green color that was very cool looking. Last year it was the blue. It sounds like this year it's going to be this brown bronze color.
Yeah. But beyond that, I mean, all right, so putting aside, potential color changes, for folks who have a 15, like every year, the question becomes, what could you possibly have put in there that will make me feel like I need to upgrade as opposed to, well, I should upgrade because I do, other than the AI, because I think the AI is the selling point for not only the OS, but a device that can run it, which is not many of them.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say, is that is the answer there. Is for an iPhone 15 Pro user, there's not too much that I can think of that they would really want to sell for a new iPhone 16 model. However, for everybody that didn't get specifically the iPhone 15 Pro, I think that that's going to be the answer, is that they are going to make it so that every one of their phones can run all of the new iOS stuff, down all the way to the bottom level model, the base model iPhone 16. That, in a lot of ways, I think is going to be the main thing that they really need to do, is bump the amount of memory that's available in the system on a chip. That seems to have been the cutoff that they've done so far, is that every device of theirs that has 16 gigs of RAM can run Apple Intelligence. Everything that has less than 16 gigs of RAM cannot. And so it's only the iPhone 15 Pro models on the phone that have that. And then you obviously, of course, also have all of the M-Star Macs and all of the M-Star iPads. But I think what they need to do next year is put enough memory in even the base model iPhone 16 so that every phone that somebody can go out and buy day one does have support for Apple Intelligence.
I've never, from Apple's perspective, I've understood why they structured the things the way they do. And, that we all know that pricing structure that Tim wants, right? every $100 point I want a thing, right? And but at the same time, it has always baffled me why you would bother to do this, because it almost actually doesn't make sense just for the money, right? I mean, I get it that you want people to think, well, I need to get the next one up because it's got this. Now, I say that because when gonna confess here, you already know this, but I don't think I ever mentioned it to the audience. So I did upgrade my iPad after all because I figured out a way to do a good deal on it. And so, okay, you know what? Shoot me down, folks. I did it. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it because of the pencil, the new pencil. Interestingly, one of the deciding factors for me there, as I was doing that, was the fact that like the 1 terabyte version has this much memory. The 512 has less, right? So I went with the bigger one because I planned to have this thing for a while so that I could have the terabyte with the extra memory in the hope that the OS would have a whole bunch of things that would benefit from it. From a user's perspective, I wonder how much that really matters, how much is available memory, other than it just silently closes apps in the background that they didn't notice anyway.
Yeah, I think that has been a benefit to having more memory for a while now, has been the, fewer apps get closed in the background, fewer tabs are getting closed in Safari all the time. If you are switching between tabs, it'll kill it if there's not enough memory in place. But I think this year it really is all about, you have this extra memory in the background when you need it, but it's more going to be about those bursts. When you are using Apple Intelligence to do summarization or to do image generation or to do any of the things that Apple Intelligence has been shown off to do, I think what Apple's going to do is they're going to evict everything else. They're going to go, this 16 gigs of memory or whatever is just for running one of our big models right now. And so that's why they need that memory in places. You've got to have those whole models resident in memory in order for any of this to work. And so I think that is where they're going to be picking this up, is if you want these particular, like, very generative heavy features to work, we're basically going to say clear the decks and make it run that.
It makes a lot of sense. The last thing, like I say, with these is you want to release new hardware and operating system that you have really, I feel, spoken up more than previous years. And then have this problem of almost kind of a backlash from users when it's like, oh, well, this is pretty sucky compared to, how it was sold to me, right?
Yeah. Well, that is why they're limiting it to only the phones that can do it, really. I think that you this is why you don't see it coming to even the iPhone 15, like regular model iPhone 15, is not getting any of the new stuff that is branded Apple Intelligence this year. And so I think that's why you see it, is like people are not, it's not going to work. It's not going to work certainly on device. And so Apple's like, oh yeah, we're all about privacy. We're going to have it local, in memory, never touches our servers unless you have a phone older than 1 year. I think that what they're doing is they are very much saying, this is how we plan on doing it. This is the ideal way of doing it. Unfortunately, we did not build the hardware. We did not foresee this happening. We did not build into hardware down, 3 years ago that we needed to have this much memory to support it. So unfortunately, it is going to be a cutoff for iPhone 15 Pro and then everything iPhone 16.
Part of me says, I'm okay with this because I've got a 15 Pro.
Exactly.
Right? But I also do agree that it's like, if not going to be able to run it for reasons that maybe a lot of everyday users wouldn't understand, don't do it, right?
Yep.
And live with them complaining about it, because they will, if you gave it to them, they'd probably complain more anyway.
Yep.
So, I agree with that. Hey folks, if you like what you're hearing in this podcast and you want to help this podcast to continue going forward and having great guests and great conversations, I invite you to become a Patreon supporter. You can go to patreon.com/CompileSwift, where you will get ad-free versions of the podcast along with other content. Now, on this note, I'm curious what you think about this. I have read Again, rumors, folks, so take it for what it's worth. But this one actually, to me, feels very Apple-like. I have read that you will potentially have a core of AI services that you get, maybe because you've got the Apple, what do they call that thing? I know I've got it, the family, whatever, extra service thing.
The iCloud bundle, Apple One.
Thank you. That's it. Apple One. That's it. Yeah. And then you would potentially have to pay a monthly fee subscription to get access to some other services. And I'm curious if that turned out to be the case. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it does sound very Apple-y, but it also sounds very counter to what their current process is. They have said so many times that a lot of what they are doing with Apple Intelligence is happening on device. And I think for that reason, that is why we don't see that at least announced so far of, hey, you're going to need to pay for this AI service, yada, 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 because they're doing everything on device. And so there's no need for it to be run on Apple servers. Therefore, you don't need to pay the cost of running this generation as part of it. So yeah, I can definitely see them adding a feature like that down the road where they're like, oh, we have something that really needs, big, heavy machines thrown at it. But I think Apple's still kind of like they're getting their feet wet with are they even producing, that I don't think we're going to see that this year, at least.
Okay. I even at one point thought, boy, it would be a real kind of sting if they said, hey, you know what? We found a way to make it available for older devices. If you're cool with not doing it on the hardware and doing it on secure Apple hardware and paying a subscription.
Yeah, I think that muddies too much their argument of we are the AI that doesn't.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, right? Because we know that they've invested a lot heavily and things we don't even know about for, Apple-based chip dedicated for their AI stuff. It only makes sense, and I should say I'm very excited about the OS on the phone and in particular the iPad this year.
Yep. I'm pretty excited about some of the stuff on the Mac too. You've got all of the new writing tools. You've got the summarization in messages and mail. A lot of the same stuff that is on the iPhone. But if you're using Apple's apps, you have that same sort of benefit now available also to you on the Mac. And so I'm excited to see these same sort of tools across the ecosystem.
The Mac just has felt very mature, right? Operating system for a good few years. And okay, we could poke fun at bugs and so on. But I mean, as far as what it should do, it's very mature. And so I expect it to be incremental year on year. What I'm hoping comes from this year's one is, as you mentioned, a lot of the writing tools. In fact, it's kind of ironic because October the 10th, my Grammarly subscription is up for renewal. And I actually feel a bit bad about this because I thought, great, that probably gives me a little time to play with the Apple version, essentially. But also, I have a running streak of some ridiculous amount of years of using Grammarly. So it's also like, I don't want to lose the streak. But if Grammarly has been Sherlocked, right, on the Mac, okay, then I won't renew.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it comes down to. So I am excited about that. One other thing I did want to mention, though, is if the AI works 75% as good as they claim, will I start using Siri more on the Mac? Because I didn't use it at all on the Mac.
So I think the interesting one there is the addition that they've added to iOS 18. And I don't know that I've seen this on Sequoia yet. First of all, have they released an 18.1 type edition of Sequoia? Do we have a version of Sequoia with the Apple Intelligence?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen 18.1 come out, but I don't know that I've seen a 15.1 Sequoia.
I was going to say, to my knowledge, I don't recall ever looking at what AI looks like on the Mac.
So to go back to that, I mean, a lot of what is coming in Sequoia.1 or whatever they decide to, wherever they decide to launch it, is a lot of the same sort of stuff that's coming on 18.1 with the writing tools, the image generation, all of that kind of exciting stuff. But you asked specifically about Siri and would you use Siri more on the Mac? One thing that they've added to 18.1, and which I assume that they'll also add to Sequoia's Apple Intelligence release, is the ability to type to Siri. And I think that that would be what really is what would drive more use of Siri on the Mac, at least for me, is the ability to say, hey, maybe there's a Siri window similar to what you get with Spotlight or to what you get with any of the third-party tools that are similar to Spotlight, whether that's Alfred or Raycast or whatever the other fancy ones are. If you could have something like that where you hit a button, Siri pops up, and you're able to just ask natural language questions to Siri there directly and have it do stuff in your system, I think that would drive a lot of use of Siri. Whereas if it continues to be that you have to hit a button and then you have to talk to your laptop, I don't see people using that quite so much.
Well, funny enough that you mentioned that, I'm just looking at my laptop here because maybe I imagined it. Isn't there a microphone button?
There is a microphone button.
So wouldn't you make that activate Siri if it's not already?
But and I think there is a way to do that. But the question is, could you do it in a way that you don't have to talk?
Yeah. Well, actually, I like what you said. The idea of whatever flavor of Spotlight you use, it just being in there. Even if I have to do like a /command something, /S or whatever to active to like, hey, don't do this, run this app, do this, whatever. I'm now talking to Siri. I'd be totally cool with that.
Yeah. So yeah, also me not following any of the rumor sites. Are we expecting to see any other sort of hardware updates? I personally, would love an update to the AirPods Max, but I think they typically do those later in the year, more the music-focused events. Are we expecting to see any other sort of hardware released alongside the iPhone 16?
Yeah, good question. So I've seen mention, in as valid as you want to take that, I've seen mention of new AirPod Pros. I think I even saw a thing about possibly new Beats headphones, but I may be confusing that with an updated firmware that adds new features. I wouldn't be surprised to see new AirPods, right? They sort of go hand in hand with the phone in many ways, if you pardon the pun, right? Yeah. It's been long enough that the current generation's been out. Certainly, you're absolutely right. The Max is kind of like, well, we made these to see how it went. We saw how it went, and we left it there, which would be a shame because I don't have them. I know, like yourself and other folks who have them who really like them. So, it always has been a bit odd to me that it's like, Beats and Max, but then I forget. It's like, well, but it is kind of two different markets, and Apple's getting paid twice for having both, Interestingly, what's also been very quiet, I think, is like the Apple TV, right?
Yeah.
I don't expect all these features like we're getting with the Mac and, iPhones and so on.
We're not getting a 16 gigabyte Apple TV that can run Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. But doesn't that feel like the perfect place for it? Right? I'm in the living room watching one of the many sports events bought up by Apple. Wouldn't you want to be able to just right there and then ask AI some questions about whatever's going on, right?
Sure. I don't know. I don't know that I have anything in particular that I would think of. I know that they did brand the new iSight feature that they have as being at least in some sense powered by Apple Intelligence, but I don't know how much that is actually running on device with the Apple TV.
All right.
But they're just saying, oh, this is who this person is that you've seen in another thing before.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see what happens. Maybe, wouldn't it be nice to have a surprise? Something that actually
surprises.
Didn't see
surprises are always great, which is why I tend not to follow the rumor cycle. And then it's funny. All of the people that have followed the rumors, they're like, oh, but they didn't announce this. It's like, I didn't even know that we were supposed to expect that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, we didn't announce the thing we weren't going to announce.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Apple event page for last year. And one obvious one that I've completely blanked on is whether or not we're getting a new Apple Watch this year. Last year at the September event, they announced the Apple Watch Series 9 and Apple Watch Ultra 2. I would assume that we're going to get another Series 10 at this point, but I don't know. What do we expect? Anything from the Apple Watch side of the house?
I'm feeling like the watch would be an early next year thing. I mean, we absolutely will get a new generation, of course. But I kind of feel like
it looks like the last 2 years they've done Apple Watch at the September event, though. In 2023, we got a Series 9, and in 2022, it says 3 new Apple Watch models.
But I'm thinking, depending on which market you want to read, they need to make the iPhone stand out a bit more again, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And instead of it sort of falling into that category of, well, it's just one of the things Apple makes, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like the sensible thing would be, let's just put some space here and really make the iPhone a thing again. And then, hey, we'll do the other stuff maybe with a surprise event or something.
Yeah. They always have multiple events at the end of the year, so they can reshuffle these as much, however they want.
So I kind of feel like this one, nobody asked me, but if they did, I would say, make this one more about the iPhone than anything else. And if you want to throw something in, fine. But really make it about the iPhone to convince folks why they should get this with the AI. Well, of course, that's the other irony is maybe you're going to get the phone without the AI at first, which is still weird. I don't know, but, I guess I do want to comment on that in general and say this is, to me, another example of Apple at the beginning of the year making a lot of promises that don't necessarily come around the way they said they would. And it's getting to be too much of a habit.
They definitely telegraphed that a lot more this year, where they said, a lot of this stuff is going to be coming out over the next year rather than this is stuff coming out in 18.0. But it is surprising the level to which that seems to be true with iOS 18.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I do think is a real shame because there is so much to love in it.
Yeah.
Right. But that's only because, folks out there listening to this and you and I, we've lived with this thing since June, right?
Exactly.
And so we know what's in there to be excited about, but you've got to have that public facing thing to sell it in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I think that's like, if you take those back and you just say coming soon.
If Apple has said, if people have heard the stories all along that this is brand new AI features, what they get in a couple Fridays is dark mode icons and control center widgets.
Yeah, it's not going to go great, right? Yeah. And I feel like Apple needs to stop putting themselves in the spotlight for a little bit of ridicule in some ways. Promise the earth and then deliver a little bit, eventually deliver it all. But so far down the line that people have kind of forgotten, like, oh, that's right, there was going to be this AI thing.
This did happen.
Yeah, interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Of course, we'll be talking about it. But folks, I'm hoping you're really excited that, we've got another voice on this podcast to explain to me why I get all these things wrong in real time, as opposed to when everybody listens to it afterwards and they're like, no, he's wrong. So again, Jeff, thank you so much for wanting to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this. Oh, I'm just so excited about this. Tell folks, go ahead, tell them where they can find you.
You can find all of my links and such on cocotype.com. My main other social hangouts are Threads, threads.net/cocotype, and Twitch, twitch.tv/cocotype. But yeah, cocotype.com is where you can find almost everything.
Yep, and we will, of course, be putting these in the show notes. You know where to find me, ImpalaSwift.com. And with that, folks, hey, it's a whole new era. And by the time we speak next time, who knows? Maybe we'll have some surprises to talk about. See you later, folks.
That's it.